Welcome to another edition of Throwing on Some Heavy Light. My name is Jim Binding. I'm the chair of the board of Movement No More for Race Equity, which deals with anti-racism. We're probably the only organization, nonprofit, that deals with racism, anti-racism. We also host a number of community forums. We have a number of book discussions and things. We try to convene people to talk about issues of the day and challenges, because oftentimes our mainstream entities will not do that and bring grassroots and grass tops and credible messengers to the forefront to talk about it. Over the past year, we've witnessed brutal genocide is practiced by the state of Israel against Palestinian women, children, and innocent men. Oftentimes, you don't hear them talk about the men who died, but they were also part of the victims of that crazy situation over there. The United States, with its history of practicing similar behaviors against Native Americans and African Americans, is supporting and practice in the Middle East, particularly in Gaza. And we have Zane, I'm not sure if I'm getting it right, who grew up in West Omaha, who is Jewish. He's been involved in the Palestinian Coalition and the Jewish Voice for Peace groups to help stop those unlawful activities. We also have Zane, a Palestinian American immigrant who is with Nebraska for Palestine, and which is also involved in dealing with this issue. We invited them both in this to be on this program to talk about what's been going on, and they've been involved in these issues for a number of years. So first, I always say to my guests, share a little bit more about yourself, and we'll get right into the questions.
Yeah, I'll start here. Just want to say thank you for everyone that came. I grew up here in Omaha, and I think we're having a little discussion before this all started, and Stuart mentioned something about he's happy how active Omaha is, and I think I'm just thrilled to see so many people come and show up, and I never thought of Omaha as a place where activism could happen. Growing up here, it felt very much like a white haven where
Right.
everyone kind of just sat with the status quo. So kind of discovering the circles around here that believe in freedom and equality has been really exciting, and I'm excited to have a discussion with you guys today.
Okay.
Thank you, Ajmal. I'm Zaeem Haq, and I'm actually a Pakistani immigrant. I think heard you say Palestinian immigrant,
Oh,
but I'm a
sorry about that. You know
Pakistani.
how when you get old, your eyes get a little strange. Go, I appreciate you there.
I
Thank you.
don't want to offend any Palestinians
No,
out
hey,
there,
hey, hey, we universal,
so
bro. Go, keep going.
we are all Palestinian. That's for sure.
There we
But I'm
go.
a Pakistani immigrant. I've been living here since I was 15 for 18 years. I've been organizing, been an activist, been organizing with Nebraskans for Palestine. And yeah, thank you for having us. Looking forward to this discussion and trying to debunk some of the lies that our media has been spreading for a really long time, and kind of gaslighting us. So here to talk about all of that. So thank you.
Good, appreciate it. Well, let me start off with these questions. It's gonna be a little bit rapid fire. One of the things we want to ask questions, the challenge of getting to Palestinians to speak about these issues. And one of the challenges I had was finding people who are from there, who've been there. And so, are there individuals or extractions of that group in Omaha, and how can you avoid being what we call a great white savior on this issue, especially when there are group members like that maybe around? I'm not sure.
So I'll go ahead and start this off, Zane. So first of all, Nebraskans for Palestine, I'm going to refer it as NFP, by the way, to shorten it out. NFP is a Palestinian women-led organization. Our decisions, our say-so comes from these Palestinians that are leading our organization. So that's how we avoid the issue of the great white savior complex that revolves around a lot of grassroots organizations. Um, Also, just in general, you don't have to be Palestinian to be talking about this issue, honestly. This is a human rights issue, and it's all of our obligation to actually raise awareness about it, keep talking about the genocide in Palestine committed by Israel. We need to name the offenders by name and what the problem is over there. Um, and honestly, like I said, it's everybody's duty to come out and support human rights. So I really don't blame the Arab or the Palestinians that are here that are not speaking up in the capacity like we are, because we live in a fascist we live under a fascist atmosphere, political atmosphere where all of our voices have been oppressed by by entities like ICE and our government itself, our police, they're racist. So
Right.
as much as it is the Palestinian people's duty to rise up, it is all of our collective duty to come out and support Palestine and support human rights.
Good, good. Now, there are many in the media who say the United States has been pimped by the state of Israel in terms of billions of dollars that we give to that country for years. How do you push back or we respond when folks call it anti-Semitic for attacking the war-driven nation of Israel?
So I'll go ahead and start this one off. So I'm from an organization called Jewish Voice for Peace. It is predominantly a Jewish-led organization. Of course, anyone can join and join the cause, but it is our responsibility, we feel, to use that privilege of being, white and Jewish to try and, combat that really, really common claim of anti-Semitism anytime someone attacks the beliefs and the actions of the state of Israel. Um, and so while there may be some tropes that are involved with, Jews hypnotizing the leadership of the United States in order to, conduct this war, that's not what it's about at all. Israel has always been an American and British and, Western world project. So it's not necessarily Israel convincing the United States to do something. We've always worked in tandem with them. It's a Jewish belief to oppose genocide.
Mm,
Doesn't matter who it's against, right?
right,
Uh, and so the correlation of Jewish people with the state of Israel, which is what's happening and anytime you criticize Israel, you're called anti-Semitic, there's a correlation there. You attack Israel, you're attacking Jews. That sentiment is anti-Semitic. To assume that because I'm Jewish, I must support the state of Israel, that's anti-Semitic. That's assuming because of my identity that I have a belief system, that I'm a monolith. And that's, I mean, unfortunately, very common. I mean, we talk about the media and its racism. I mean, they're allowed to get away with whatever they want and push the narrative. And so it's such a common narrative now that attacking Israel is
right.
anti-Semitic,
I hear you. Appreciate
but it's absolutely not.
appreciate it.
I
Now,
would like to
Nebraska,
add on here too a little bit. Sorry, Ajmal, bumping in. That we are anti-Zionist actually. We're not anti-Jewish. When we're out demonstrating and we're protesting and calling for human rights, we're anti-Zionist. We're not anti-Jewish. That's critical. That is the key. And Zionism is a political ideology. It's not a religious belief. So being anti-Zionist, anti-Israeli government should not qualify you as anti-Semitic.
right,
Um,
right, right.
and that should be a well-known fact within our masses here. You know, media will try to gaslight you and lead you astray in believing that, oh, we hate all Jews, blah, blah, blah. That is not the case.
Well,
So,
let me add a little bit to it. The United Nations in 1975 considered Zionism a form of racism, and let me break it down a little bit more, as Malcolm would say, make it clear, make it plain. When you think your group is better than other people, or you have this superiority complex, or you're the chosen one, that's the foolish and stupidity that's been promulgated in our community. And again, as African Americans, we know that too well. But let me move to my next question real quick. Um, both of you are relatively young. What kind of support do you give for your cohorts? I mean, I say young in my age, I'm 71, but my question is, what kind of, in your peer groups, who do your peer group support what you do?
You can go ahead and start, Zane.
yeah, our peer groups do support what we do. A lot of the young people are anti-capitalist. They are anti-racist. It is hard to organize in a red state like Nebraska, though. I'm not
You
gonna
forgot
lie.
redneck state. Let's go a little bit farther. Bunch of rednecks running this government. Seriously.
Uh, yeah. Yeah, so it is hard to organize in a space of this nature, a state or a country that's been brainwashed so much since the Vietnam War. It's been brainwashed with patriotism. It's been brainwashed with we gotta fight for our freedoms, all that nonsense that the media pushes on us. It is hard, but it is our duty to spread awareness and talk the truth about this issue.
Right.
Let the people know what's going on, how US is actually funding Israel to commit a genocide with our tax dollars. It is as much as it is Israel's genocide on Palestine, it is the US America's genocide on Palestine as well, because Israel would not be able to commit this genocide if it did not have our tax dollars helping them and
Right,
our weapons helping them.
right.
So um we do have to spread awareness, that awareness throughout our young masses. And young people are changing. If you haven't noticed, TikTok was bought out by US from China to stop the spread, or stop the spread of debunking their lies, you know? So that's point in case right there.
Mm. One other thing I would add to that, and I think part of the challenge that we face is the mass media. And I know the New York Times and some of those entities got some of these Zionist personalities running them, and they're doing CBS and things like that. And I saw an article today that said so many people in Iran were killed. They used the number like 36,000. I don't know if that's true, but again, when you see it come from this racist government, you know how true it is. But we do know there's been a significant number, hundreds of people killed in Palestine and particularly Gaza. So we know that we've seen it with our own eyes. And again, it's that same arrogance. So we got to talk about those numbers from time to time. I'm gonna switch up and ask you a different kind of a question. I've heard folks who believe that they're going to experience a terrible situation because of the attack on Iran. In other words, the media is pointing that out like something's going to happen to a lot of people. Should Nebraskans fear or be overtly concerned with an unprovoked attack on that country, considering what our silly, asinine, stupid president is doing?
I think sort of have two answers to this. I mean, one, yes, absolutely. I mean, our government decided to attack a nation, and nowadays technology has come in such a way that, even a country like Iran has, ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles that they can send over this way and carry a payload, right? And run off at airbase. Yeah, sure, you can be concerned. And remember 9/11. I mean, that was our doing. That was us creating hateful groups in the Middle East that eventually gave rise to Al Qaeda, that eventually boomerang back and, you know, provoked a terror attack on our state. On top of that, I'd also like to say that I think having only caring about this from I call it a selfish perspective, but that's sort of the talking points that go around a lot now is like, oh, we shouldn't have attacked Iran because they can attack us back. But I think something that's missing a lot in the discussion about this is we shouldn't have attacked Iran because we're killing innocent people. And there's a lot of excuses going around of, oh, Iran killed its own people. Iran killed protesters, right? So our solution for that would then be, bombing more innocent people and causing unrest, which causes, more innocent lives lost. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't track. So we should be afraid. And also, we should be driven by empathy in our decision making. We shouldn't only oppose the war because we're afraid of getting attacked or being drafted. We should also oppose a war because we don't want other people to be needlessly harmed.
As you say that, one thing that comes to mind, I saw they gave the what they call Nobel Peace Prize to that egghead, in Nicaragua. And I think I said to folks, the one who should have got that Nobel Peace Prize was South Africa. South Africa, the country out of its blue, came out and did that. All these people in the world, it was that country because of their experience with apartheid and their commitment to Arafat, and you name it, the history of relationship of people supporting them. And so that's where that Nobel Prize should have went to. But the other thing is you got a president or a government that is going around attacking, different countries, you name it, and saying some outlandish stuff. And then when someone says some whatever, then all of a sudden people get in their pants in the Twitter or whatever. So anyway, it's just kind of unfortunate. We're tracking real good. I want to say one of the most powerful events that occurred to me was, as I say, South Africa started the World Court and so on. And again, we know that there are 1,000 people who've died in Palestine and again Iran in terms of the girls, young girls, and so on. And many things say South Africa got that Nobel Peace, as I said, to that clown and Vincent Wade who turned around and handed it to Trump. Are you serious? They had to tell her not to do that because she's an idiot. But why is South Africa the only country that we saw that deal with that parity of tragedy to move to action? In other words, why South Africa of all countries? Shouldn't there be some other countries who are concerned with human rights doing that also? Why? Help me understand it because I don't understand it because I'm a time traveler from the future. So I got to help me your time agenda here.
So I think, Ajmal, you actually said it before, why South Africa is so aligned with Palestine is because South Africa has experienced apartheid themselves. Um, South Africa was colonized by white Europeans where they segregated the black Africans from the colonizers.
Right,
And that apartheid state did not end until the 80s or 90s, I
right,
think.
right, right.
Right. So that is exactly what's happening in Palestine right now. Israel controls Palestinian rights, right to move around their country, right to vote, right to how much food they get, right to what kind of jobs they can hold, rights to what kind of opportunities they can have. Palestinian are second, third class citizens in West Bank, Gaza, and Israel itself.
Wow.
So, so that's exactly what was happening in South Africa. It is exactly what was happening. We should actually be really concerned too, because the same thing happened to our black community over here in the US
Right,
before that is still happening actually. If
right.
you think that racism was ended in 1967 when civil rights movement happened, well, we're wrong. The same apartheid system that these colonizers brought on South Africa, that brought on America, genocided the native population here, that same power, that same playbook is playing in Israel right now, that Israel
Mm,
is doing on the Palestinians. So that's why South Africa sees themselves in Palestinians,
mm.
and actually Ireland as well.
Oh, wow.
Ireland was also colonized by British people, by mainland England. And Ireland had to fight really hard to get out of that situation. IRA was labeled a terrorist organization because they fought for their rights. They didn't want to live under the British crown. They didn't want to be oppressed. That's why Ireland is also a really big ally of the Palestinians. I'll let Zane add on to that a little bit more. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of to go back to South Africa a little bit, one corollary I want to draw is someone now that we see and look at unequivocally as a hero, but for decades we looked at as a terrorist, and that's Nelson Mandela. And that's the ANC, the African National Congress, and they were considered a terrorist group in South Africa because they're opposing apartheid. And one thing that's important to know about that is that it wasn't strictly a nonviolent protest that they did. Of course, they started that way, much like Palestinians started that way, starting with nonviolent protests and marches to try and fight for their rights, ask for their rights, and make a public appearance, but it didn't work. And so then um, that's why Nelson Mandela was in prison, for doing violent protests. He wasn't a peaceful dove. And I think that's important to note because his cause was just, right? Um, Violence is the language of the unheard, as Martin Luther King Jr. said. So um, now we look at that as a corollary now today to October 7th. We're going to look back decades from now, look back at October 7th and look at it as I'm Jewish. I think of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. We can look at the ANC in South Africa. We can look at Ireland, rebelling against Great Britain. And all of these things that we look back on positively because the cause was just and because they tried to resolve things peacefully and it doesn't work. And so when you're facing a fascist oppressor like Israel, you have to respond with violence if it's necessary. And so that's what happened on October 7th. And that's why I think it's important to get the narrative out there that, I mean, we always talk and look back at October 7th as like, this was, a terrible act. And like, yes, it was, we don't want any innocent people to die. But also there's a reason that happened. And it's important to look at that in context.
Wow. As you say that, one of the things that comes to mind is Frantz Fanon from Martinique, and he wrote about the wretched of the earth as well as black skin, white mass, and he was very much involved in the Algerian revolution. And I didn't know how brutal it was in terms of looking at some of the pictures on YouTube, but the fascism and so on. But he was kind of he considered people call him the Karl Marx of Africa in a sense because he basically said you're not going to get your liberation unless you use violence against your oppressor. Again, you can be nonviolent as you want, but again, sometimes the only thing they understand is to fight back. And again, that's one of those challenges that we've been heaped upon is that you don't see America being nonviolent in Vietnam, or you don't see none. And again, half the time they got their feet in other people's country. In other words, how do our interests is protected in some of these countries when people didn't invite you in? And so you go and you bomb a few places and try to do the blackmail and the bribery that the president is doing. And again, everybody knows that's wrong. So one of the issues that we got to deal with is how do we deal with it as people in our communities? Because sometimes the question I would raise here is what can the average person do? How do people get involved with your group, or what can they do to be part of this struggle to push back as we've had in other struggles against fascism and neo-Nazi mentality and enslavement and apartheid? What can they do from your perspective, both of you guys' perspective, to challenge our system?
We have a little bit of time, so I'm going to backtrack and ramble a little bit, Jamal,
Okay.
if you don't
I don't
mind.
ramble too long now because we're gonna close up at
No, I'm not.
7:30. Okay. Okay, we're not a preacher here now. We're not a church, bro. Go ahead.
I'm wary of time here, so we do have
There
a
you
little bit of
go.
time. So Palestinians have demonstrated nonviolent resistance before.
Hmm.
The Great March of Return in 2019 was Gazans walking to the border of Gaza and Israel and asking for their land back. And they were shot in the knees and in the head and in the neck
By the Israel government,
by Israeli government,
those
IDF.
troops.
The troops shot them at the border, and
Wow.
they were just holding signs, raising Palestinian flags on the border, asking for rights, asking for freedom, asking to be let out of this cage that is Gaza, this open air prison that is Gaza, asking that, hey, we want freedom, we want our rights, we want future for our kids. And they were in return, they were shot in the head and foot and neck and everywhere else. And as outsiders, we have no right to tell an oppressed people how they should resist their oppressors.
Mm.
We are not under occupation ourselves, occupation of that intent ourselves. I can't go and tell a Palestinian, no, you shouldn't be, you should treat the person that killed all of your family with nonviolence. That's what we're doing. We're literally telling
Turn the
somebody,
other
hey,
cheek, ain't no turn no cheek
all your
here.
life is destroyed. You don't have a home. You have
Right.
no family. You have no opportunity. You're not going to be let out of this cage forever. But don't be violent, okay? Be peaceful. Be peaceful. So this is what we're doing. That's the analogy I wanted to add on. Um, and I'm going to go back to your question that you just asked, how people can get involved in our organizations. So I'm from Nebraskans for Palestine. I volunteer and organize with Nebraskans for Palestine. Nebraskans for Palestine is a advocacy group for Palestine. We advocate for Palestinian rights by spreading awareness in Nebraska and debunking the lies of the media, basically. We hold demonstrations, we hold protests, we do fundraising for Palestinians, and we hold different kinds of events in with Palestine to bring awareness to this issue. It's super simple to get a hold of us. You can go to our Instagram page at Nebraskans for Palestine, and in that you can, from the link in that bio, you can get in contact to us. You can send us a direct message saying that you want to be directly involved. And then you can also email us at nebraskansforpalestine@gmail.com as well. And you can actually be involved in any capacity that you have. Volunteer, organize with us, however you like. We're here with open arms, trying to make our base bigger. So,
Right. Before we go, I wanted to
No,
also
I have a question. Can I get a
well,
question in?
no, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it in about 5 more minutes. We'll open up for questions.
Oh, okay.
We're at the interview part here.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate you. The other thing I was gonna say is one of the things I'm concerned with in Nebraska, you got people opposing the law that we have kids or students learn about the Holocaust and Zionism type behavior, but we don't include Native Americans who are here in this country or African Americans who have experienced horrific situations. I had a guy years ago, and again, freedom of thought here. He said, and it was a strange way he put it, an older gentleman. He says, it's one thing to kill 5 million or 4 million worth of Jewish people, but how many Africans have died in enslavement for generations? And again, take away your language, you do the stuff that they've done to us, castration, lynches, you name it. He said, and again, it was a way how he put it that I didn't know how to understand it. But what he said, we got to be careful when we pick other people's water and run with it, and we won't even run with our own. And I've met people here in this country, they want you to carry their flags, but you look at the foolishness that happened in this country, especially in Nebraska. Most people may not know it. The Senator Chambers was the first person to introduce the bill against anti-apartheid investment. And so again, we were known for that, but we cannot be out here in other countries trying to talk about human rights. We got some of the same issues here, but we also need to be conscious, as was said earlier, is that we have a connectedness. We all, when we see somebody oppressed and we see our government involved in that massacres and genocide against other groups, we need to push back. And I'm reminded of a South African guy that says, when I was in Botswana, he says, you need to go back and do some stuff in your country to help us out from that side. So what I'm saying is that basically we got to look at this not only from an international way, but we also got to look at the atrocities and the mote or the speck in our eyes in this country. We got about a few more minutes. I want to give you guys both a chance for a quick question if I can. How do you measure the effectiveness of what you do? Because I know a lot of people, I saw there's a note here from Doug talking about the march, No King's March, things like that. And, I'm always questioning when people do stuff, is it like a book reading group where you come together and you socialize? How do you measure how effective you are in your organization? And again, what drives you to do that? And we got about 4 minutes here before we move into the dialogue where the guest can ask you, the participant can ask you a question.
I think to give a really quick answer, I mean, one way that we measure, just a long-term measurement, is what we are allowed to say at events like a No Kings protest. So, I mean, that was a predominantly, a liberal protest, right? A lot of, capital D Democrats from across the spectrum of ideology. And I've been to, many events like that in my life, and never before we got speakers up onto a stage to talk about how Israel was committing a genocide. If you remember when Joe Biden was president, he wouldn't use the word genocide. I mean,
Right.
That's how far we've come in the past few years. And so that's one way that we measure, and that's sort of a big overall measurement. And I think, locally here, you talk about, just membership in our organizations, the amount of people showing up to protests, the amount of people showing up to events,
Gotcha.
and how much pull that we have with our local politicians.
Good, good. Other feedback. We've got about 1 minute, a couple of more minutes. Other feedback that you measure.
The way, at least for me, how I measure success is the reaction of the people around the country.
Okay.
So when we started a war with Iran by killing their supreme leader, unprovoked actually, started a war with them, I think there's a big percentage of the people that are actually against this war, against the war with Iran. And we, if this war would have started before October 7th, I bet you that poll would have been really different. Uh, because there is so much awareness, so much debunking has been going on since October 7th. We are fighting the media's propaganda all the time on TikTok, Instagram, these private, independent journalists, independent media creators on all these platforms have been debunking Israel's and the US's lies all the time. And that's how I measure it, to where now we have an actual number saying that, hey, people are against this war. People don't want Americans to die for Israel.
Right.
People don't want their tax money going to Israel so they can commit genocide in their name.
Right.
This poll is how, at least for me, I will measure success. That, hey, if we wouldn't, Nebraska is a very small portion of it. Our population size is very small. US is very big, and the bigger cities, the movements are huge and massive. So if you just stay in this bubble over here, then it's hard to measure it. But if you look at it domestically, I think it's a lot easier to look at the bigger picture and see, yes, things are going in the right direction. Um,
Good. Appreciate it. Folks, we're right up on our time. We'll open it up for our participants to ask questions or turn your mic on. Doug, I saw that you were quick to the draw, but we're opening up, and so you can either put it in the chat or directly open your mic up and talk directly to Zane.
I've got my mic open.
Okay, what's your question or comment?
The question I posted is, do either Nebraskans for Palestine or JVP have a speaker at the Saturday No Kings Rebellion?
We do, Doug. NFP has a speaker at
Okay,
No Kings protest. Also have a table at the No Kings protest where you can find us. And yes, we will be
terrific.
there.
It's just
Good.
terrific.
Yep,
Other
and
feedback?
JVP will be there as well. So
Oh,
come and stop by.
Good. Other questions, other feedback?
I have a question.
Cheers, go ahead.
Uh, I asked this question many years ago, and I think the answer is obvious. But is the two-state solution dead? And since I'm quite sure it is, then what, you guys? What then is the vision for the Palestinian people?
Yeah, sorry, Zaeem. I'll go quick. I think yes. I would say in actual, non-astroturf circles, the two-state solution is dead. You go and ask an AIPAC-funded, politician that's trying to, play the game of like, well, Israel needs defensive weapons and we need a two-state solution. Sure, but no, the one-state solution is the way forward, and it's definitely tough because you have, you know, third, fourth generation Israeli people that have been born into houses. I mean, if you do the same thing that you've done to Palestinians and go and raid their houses and kick them out, you're going to have a very similar problem. So there does need to be an integration of both people. I mean, it needs to be a single state. Call it whatever you want. I think Israel has a stink to it now, so you can call it Palestine. But we need a way to reintegrate the people, and I think that comes through a long-term period of re-education of Israeli people. If you take a poll of Israelis right now, they're insanely racist towards Palestinians. Most of them don't see them as human beings. So there needs to be a re-education period in order to allow that to happen. It's not going to be a fast process, which sucks because you want Palestinians to have, instant justice. And in order for it to be sustainable, it needs to be a measured approach, but it needs to start immediately. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that, but it it's still further off than we'd like to be. Zaeem, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, thank you. So I honestly think that is not a question for a non-Palestinian to answer. The issue here is that Israel does not let Palestinians have self-determination. Everybody asks the world, "Hey, what do you want to do with Palestine?" It's not our job. It's Palestinians need to make a decision for themselves what they want. One state, two state, no state. It's their job. We need to let them govern themselves, which Palestinians have been lacking for a very, very long time, since the creation of Israel, actually.
mm,
So, so that question itself is not for us to answer. If I was Palestinian living in Palestine, maybe living in the diaspora, maybe I would have the right or justification to say what what should happen with Palestine. Second of all, I think the issue here is that no matter one state, two state, no state, one thing is pretty obvious. There needs to be an end to this violence occupation of Palestinians. Under occupation, there's no one state, two state, no state. It all goes away. So the first problem and first issue we have to solve is we have to free Palestine from the Israeli violent occupation that it's been under since 1948 and from the Zionist project that started way before that, before World War II even. So that's where my headspace is when it comes to that question. Hey, what do you believe in? Two state, one state? Palestinians should decide that actually.
Mhm. You know, what's fascinating is I remember over the years where the young kids, Palestinian kids, would throw rocks at that, and then they go and bulldoze their whole house and do some crazy, asinine, stupid stuff. And I'm like, you don't expect repercussions at some point when you destroy a person's home because a kid threw a rock at a tank or something like that. And so again, it shows you the level of fascism. But I just want to say something real quick. I just finished reading the book The Future is History, and it talks about the Soviet Union and Russia particularly. And basically, some of the things that happened in that country is also happening in Palestine area where you got this kind of dictatorial mentality. They're dealing with people in a very brutal way. And again, what is unfortunate, the way this book is written, is like it's predicting. It talks about the history, but it shows we keep repeating it. And one of the things that I think the government of Israel, and again, I want to be real sensitive to say not necessarily everybody in that country buy into this Zionism crap. But at the end of the day, we got to be able to understand that what we do to young kids and people, they will come back to bite us on our butt. And I think that's one of the issues we're trying to push back. Is again, we don't want everybody to think that we're part of this regime that right now exists in Washington that is about as fascist and as elitist and racist you can get. And you still got people got their head up somebody's buttocks thinking it's normal. But anyway, other questions, other feedback. I get on my editorial statement here and let other folks talk. There's a comment here from Cynthia. Cynthia, do you want to say it directly yourself?
Are you asking me,
Yes, yes.
Sandy?
Cynthia or Sandy? Okay.
Well, anyway, go ahead. We got plenty of time for y'all. I saw Cynthia's name on this thing, but yeah, we go in sequence. Whatever you want to do, we good.
I would invite whichever one of you wants to speak about the UNO and UNL student groups because I love students, especially college. And I know there's something happening regarding weapons, which is one of the things we can do since we're not Palestinians, or I'm not. I need to get on the weapon
I'm right
issue
now
stronger.
sitting
So that's what I invite you to
to
speak
Zoom.
on.
Yeah, I know about the UNL bill that was brought to their student body or their student senate actually, and the student senate actually did vote to divest from investing in weapons companies, or at least UNL being invested in weapon companies. So the student senate itself did vote yes on that, but I'm not exactly sure where they are in that or what the next steps were and where they are in the process after that. But I know there is movement happening in that regard. As far as UNO is concerned, I myself I'm not aware of that to spread some light or shed some light on it, unfortunately.
Good. Sandy, did you want to say something?
Well, I was going to point out that there's a program tomorrow night at UNO with students pushing this. And so people could go to that.
And what is this program? What's the main focus on the program that's going to be tomorrow night?
Just asking their college or their university not to be supporting that. And they haven't gotten any help from that with the administration right now. So if you have enough people coming and saying, we are the students of this, our money is carrying this college and university. So it's been that way for a lot of years. There have been things going on. And for instance, the United States has always voted against international law with the United Nations. The two people that vote against it are Israel and the United States.
Right.
And so things like that don't pass easily. And we're still, we got a ceasefire going and we're still giving money.
All right, it's crazy. I hear you.
So, yeah, but the young people are doing things like that. And we have over the years brought Israelis who have realized this is wrong.
Right.
This is.
I see Hazel's hand. Maybe Hazel has the answer.
Hazel?
Yeah, sorry, I cannot have my camera on. I'm a student at UNMC, so we also have an SJP, like Student for Justice in Palestine chapter there. Basically, the divestment from weapon company is about all of the university like UNMC, UNL, UNO, UNK under one umbrella of University of Nebraska. and they have endowment, which basically mean like a saving account that have about $9 million in a weapon company. So all the university like student trying to have a divestment bill, calling them to not invest in that because basically there's no like policy around what they can invest. So a couple of years ago, I think in 2021, we have a similar divestment regarding fossil fuel, and it did pass because it's like an also an ethical investment. Um, so it's the same thing here, where weapon also an ethical investment. It would be really helpful if like community members, like people in this like meeting, or yeah, it show up tomorrow, yeah, at 7 p.m. Yep. Um, to like just express your support for this divestment because a lot of times student senate is very afraid of voting like around these things because they think like they being framed as like anti-Semitic, or they're like there's nothing have to do with student. But if they see like support from community, they know it's important for like people in Omaha. Um, that would be very helpful for them to pass it.
You
That
know,
doesn't necessarily mean that like it's going to become a real action with the administration. However, it does say like what students care about.
hmm.
But
Hey, so one of the things that hit me, and maybe somebody else can answer, I noticed in some of the other colleges and universities in the country, they've given students hard times for pushing against this Zionism and this racism stuff. In Nebraska, have anybody got in trouble here? Because they're talking about expelling people for just participating in a nonviolent protest at the university level, and that's almost ludicrous and asinine and whatever. But in Nebraska, is there anything pushed back by our higher education? Because I do know they provide some good brainwashing education for some of us. You aware of anything that somebody
um,
got in trouble at the university or anywhere for talking about this issue?
so it's a yes and no here. Um, the no part is because we pretty small group in Nebraska, so we don't
Okay.
really do like big impact
Okay,
uh
gotcha.
action like of the encampment. So then not only that part where students get expelled. However, I do say yes, there's a lot of like oppression with the student activity. Ourselves in UNMC have a really hard time to like organize any kind of event, even like small event like jockey event. They will try their best to not letting us to do any kind of event
Wow.
to raise awareness,
Gotcha. Appreciate
or
it.
even put up like poster and stuff. So it's just very hard to organize as
Good.
student.
Good.
But yeah.
Good. So I want to come back to you guys when I ask you a question. In terms of your long-term strategy, and again, I know that you're working on this, is do you think we could ever resolve this situation? Because it's getting kind of, in other words, people are working on it, but do you think it is going to happen, or is there hope? I mean, because I heard someone express a sense of fatalism a little bit earlier, I think was raised that. Do you see hope in this
It's
horizon?
it's extremely important to maintain radical optimism in the face of something that does look. I mean, it's very easy to be nihilistic and think that there's no way out. Um, and the only way that that is true is if we give up.
Okay.
And so, whether it happens in our lifetimes or not, I would certainly hope it does. But the moment that we give up on the Palestinians, uh, that seals their fate, right? So I almost don't want to. I don't want to answer the question almost, other than just to say it's
Right.
possible. It's possible. Keep fighting for it because we can't give up on the Palestinians.
Right. I appreciate it.
I would on let me add on to it as well, Ajmal. I would say it's happening right now. Look what's happening in Iran. Iran's fighting back the biggest empire that there has ever been on this earth, US. Iran has been sanctioned for a really long time, for the last 30, 40 years. And still it's fighting back the biggest and baddest technologies on earth, which is Israel and the US empire. Iran has closed like all Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz where 20% of the oil that the world uses goes through. And US and Israel has no answer to that. So the collapse of the US empire is actually has begun right in front of us.
Hmm.
And like Zane said, we just have to keep the pressure up. We have to keep the foot on the throttle and keep going with what we're doing here. Keep spreading awareness. Don't let the media spread their narrative and their propaganda. But yeah, the U.S. empire is on the decline, and when the U.S. empire declines, Israel's best friend is US. Israel's financial, economical support, it comes from the US, comes from our tax dollars. When Israel does not have that money to carry out its occupation and genocide and violence, it's going to collapse as well. Change does happen slowly. That history has shown us revolutions do happen slowly, but somebody has to keep making it happen for it to eventually happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Zane, I want to ask you a question. Our sister has a question also, but Zane, this happened to me. And I know I have a number of Jewish friends, and again, growing up in Omaha, I went to Lewis and Clark, so they're people you've known over the years. And one of them told me privately, I'm not going to mention she used to be a former vice principal at South High School, but she said she may support the Palestinians, but the pressure is so intense from Jewish people when you do that. It's almost like the
Yes.
mafia or the Gestapo coming at you. And it was sad to hear her say that, being a person of Jewish extraction. My other colleague who has parents, grandparents who died in the Holocaust said she's she's an atheist Jew, but she has a hard time with the bandwidth of dealing with the fanatic people who are so Zionist about Israel that they can hurt you financially and otherwise if you take a position. So my question I'm asking you is, as a person who's of Jewish extraction, or how you perceive yourself, whether religious or none, and I've heard the term bad Jew mean you don't buy into some of the crap that goes on. Again, the atheist Jews would be a bad Jew. But how have it approached you from other people who may share your background or how you see it, whether it be religious or secular?
Yeah, and I mean, I have two examples here that I can share. Um, I mean, one for me personally is, I mean, within my own family. Um, yeah, I'm a secular Jew. Most of my family at this point is secular Jews. Some of the older generation are still religious and still attend temple. Um, but I'm almost alone in my family when I go to family gatherings and talking about this. It's very
So,
easy to
so they
feel
ostracize
ostracized.
you a little bit, then, is what you're saying.
Yep. And
Wow. Like the
I
Klingons,
mean,
they turn their back on you. I got you. Keep going.
yeah, but another very, very powerful example here in Omaha. So we have, and it's, ironically called Temple Israel.
Mm.
Okay. And they have Israeli flags hung up inside of I mean, I think it's disgusting. I mean, and even as a secular Jew, but where you go to worship and there's
Right.
Israeli flags where you worship, I think that's terrible.
Right.
Um, but anyway, we have a member of Jewish Boys for Peace that, was a very regular, um, attendee there, knew everyone, knew all the clergy, was a member of the board for a long time. And when she decided to speak up, um, she was essentially kicked out.
Wow. Just for a point of view.
For her point of view, she
Wow.
was approached by others that agreed with her and said, I agree with you. I'm happy you're fighting the fight, but I just can't speak up because I don't want to lose all my friends and family that I've made
Yeah.
here. I don't want to be kicked out. Um, and that is, mind you, that's a reform temple. So there's different sects of Judaism, and reform is sort of considered the more liberal, more left leaning versus like a more conservative
Gotcha.
or
Wow.
and so even the more left leaning, the more progressive version of Judaism, there's still a lot of pushback, and that's not just here in Omaha. I mean, that's all over the country.
Wow.
Um, it's terrifying.
Well, and as I say, I was surprised to hear that because again, it was almost like people are so jaded that. By the way, I just wanted to say that a book that I read in the past a couple of years is "Perpetrators, Victims, and Bystanders" by Roald Hindenburg. He's a Jewish scholar, and he also has a almost like a gigantic book called "The Destruction of the European Jews." But what I got from reading his books is that the Jewish community or the people was against it because he talked about all the people who were collaborators in Nazi Germany. Over 1,200 people were fighting who were Jewish with the Nazi Germans. So you got some historical cases where people know things are wrong and they still go to the wrong side. And I know he was rejected, but he's late now. But now his books are treated with a much more reverence or respect because he's a very scholar. He documents some of the stuff that goes on. And I think part of this conversation is that we should have freedom of speech. We should challenge folks, but you shouldn't have to suffer financial difficulties because you have a different point of view about how people are being killed and I had a supervisor one time told me I couldn't use the word Holocaust to talk about the enslavement of Africans and blacks. I said, "Who are you talking about?" You're kind of like, you don't tell me what to say. But anyway, we got a sister has a comment here. Sister, you want to share that? When did
I just was
NFP?
wondering about the general dynamics that's in Lincoln, and maybe Hazel can answer. Is that the group that organized demonstrations there? I was not able to go, but I was very glad somebody did.
Hazel, are you there?
That's
Okay.
okay. It's general information then that there is that ammunition plant that could have some of our action toward anti-weapons. Thank you.
Sorry, I was typing. But yeah, NFP was there, and there's other groups around the time too. There a group name you cannot ignore. I also put their Instagram, and that student was there too. There are actually two different General Dynamics location in Lincoln. They are private company though, so it's probably hard to like really target them.
Hmm.
One way to target them is through the City Council of Lincoln, because the City of Lincoln does have a organization named Lincoln Manufacturer Council, I believe, and they provide like different kind of training for worker to go work at one of the company. One of them are General Dynamics, and it's
Okay.
usually power public and private fund for it.
Good.
But
Thank you.
Zane, I want to ask you a question about in terms of being a Muslim, and so on, and help me a little bit with that. But being from another country, what really made you move to being part of this movement? What was the impetus, or what we call that we call the epiphany in church circles that made you get involved, being from another place in a sense?
I grew up in Pakistan. I was born and raised there, lived there for 15 years. So we were very aware of the Israel-Palestine situation from a very young age.
Hmm.
Our parents, our old peers, everybody, the general public in Pakistan is very aware of what's going on or what has been happening in Palestine. Um, but honestly, I was not actively involved in any movements or any groups to support Palestinian rights before October 7th. But after October 7th, I tell this to my peers as well that after October 7th, this is a genocide like this has not happened within our lifetime. Um, at least my coherent lifetime. There has been many genocides before, but I've been coherent through this one that's happening right now. And the first few weeks, there was unprecedented number of people dying in Palestine from Israeli bombings, civilians being killed in their homes while sleeping, kids burning alive. It's unprecedented numbers. Like I'm talking in one week, the number was like 4, 5, 6,000 people
Wow.
dead.
Wow.
So, and I was sitting there and I was like, what am I doing? What
Right.
am I doing with my life here? I'm just watching TV or doing some other random stuff that is insignificant. I need to put my efforts towards something that is even greater than me. I need to wake up. I need to wake up more people to this. And then I saw what our media was, how the media was portraying the war. I used to be a Democrat. I used to be a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. But I used to be a Democrat. And now I'm not because Democrats supported the genocide, and I could not believe it that it was my party has allowed this to happen on their watch.
Hmm.
So at that point, yeah, it really pulled me towards doing something bigger, and really advocating for Palestine. Was after October
Good.
7th.
We're down to the last 4 minutes or so, and I want to give each one of you a chance to just a minute or so, just closing comments. Anything you
Can I
want to
say
say
something
to the
real brief? Can I say something real
real,
brief?
yeah, real brief,
Yeah, it's my analysis that the genocide began in 1948. That's when it began. That's the genocide. 700,000 displaced Palestinians within a year, and it's been carrying on as a low-grade policy since then. And then just recently in October, it blew up, and it was always there. It was always there. The attack on Israel just hurried it up.
Good. Thank you. We're going to let each one of our guests say some closing comments. So, Zane, closing comments, things you want to say before we close out.
First of all, obviously, thank you everyone for coming and listening. I know a lot of us probably in this room have a lot of the same viewpoints on the genocide. And if you don't, thank you for coming and listening. That being said, it's important for all of us to do, our little part. If that means we are joining an organization to try to convince others, or make enough noise for others to pay attention, that's one thing. If it's just talking to your family members and convincing them that, hey, this isn't, what you see on CNN or Fox News is not the reality of what's going on the ground. So it's hard work, and it's risky. It's definitely scary, especially like within your family and friends, to confront them and say, hey, this is something that's going on that's wrong, and I don't agree with your viewpoint on it. Here's, what I'd like you to change. That's risky, but I think all of us need to take those risks in order to make a difference. And I thank you all for coming and hearing us out.
Appreciate it. Zane?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us, by the way, and thank you everybody for joining. On social media, there is this phrase or meme sort of thing going that one day everybody would have been against this. One day everybody would have been against the genocide. So I want you all to, I like to echo Zane, keep doing what you're doing, keep talking to your family members, keep posting about it, keep showing up to events and standing in solidarity with Palestinians. But do it now. Do it now, not 30 years from now when everybody would have been against it. You should be the people saying, "Oh yeah, you are against it now, but we have been doing this for the last 30 years." So just keep that in mind. Keep watching independent news and not follow your mainstream media. Mainstream media has been brainwashing us for a very long time, since TV. So that would be my advice. And yeah, follow NFP, follow JVP Eastern Nebraska. We need support. We need all of you to stand behind us to do this work.
Well, Zane, I appreciate it. I want to call you guys the Z Brothers, the two pit bulls who take no prisoners in this social justice work. That was a phrase my mother used to say. I take no prisoners for social justice, because we live in a very fascist country now where people can't speak and say what they want to say. And I will say, I'm at that point where I get Social Security, so I can't take my check away. And I really have freedom of speech to talk about all the Gestapo stuff, not only in the Omaha Department, Police Department, the fascism across the ocean. But one thing I want to throw a shout out to Stuart. Both of us served in the Peace Corps, and we've changed that. Once you go across the ocean and you meet people and they show you a sense of humility and a sense of respect. And at one point I tell folks, I almost gave them my citizenship to live in the country because people were showing me love, but then I got homesick to get back to Nebraska. But one of the things I learned about people are just genuinely warm and nice when you meet them elsewhere. I've seen poor people do things for me, and people that you wouldn't necessarily always see elsewhere. So we are connected to each other. And as the Native Americans say, oftentimes we're all connected through our spirit, and of course through us, what we do. There's another point I think is very important. Is everybody like to say they crossed the bridge with John Lewis and Martin Luther King and all those guys, and all those people couldn't be on that bridge back at that day. And so we as time travelers want us to be involved in making sure that in our generation, those people who come after us say, what did they do? And we have Rwanda, we have Bosnia, we have all kinds of crazy things that have happened. And the question that sometimes, as Rod Hindenburg said, there was victims, perpetrators, and of course there was bystanders. And we don't want to be known in the United States as those who sat around and let people practice genocide on innocent people and bomb school buildings and do the kind of capitalist vulture stuff that happens in the name of our government. Because again, wherever we go, we'll find good people who will fight back against oppression. On that note, I'd like to say, appreciate everybody being here today.
Amen, brother.
We always end by saying, may the force be with you, Barocco.